Welcome back to Zero Gravity Live, the Weightless Weekly, monthly. I got to get that down because we're not weekly anymore. It's in my head. It's buried in here now. It's the Weightless Monthly Tech Talk podcast, bringing all the latest and greatest discussions right to you. Sponsored by Object First UPI, best storage for Veeam. And this month, it's all about backup. But before we get into our world backup discussion, two orders of business. The first, we want to know where you're watching from. So please let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from geographically in the world. We'll give you a shout out. We love to know where our audience is across the globe. And the second order of business is because we've got the original 3 Zero Gravity members here, and it's been ages. I need to know what's going on in y'all's office, bringing it back. So I'm going to start with you, Sterling. What's up in there? What you got in there?
First of all, it is great to be back live with my best buds. It's been too long, and I'm super excited about the subsequent ones that we have this year. You said we mentioned now we are monthly, so that
We are
means
monthly.
going even bigger, right? Even
That's
better
right.
topics, even more submersive into the day of data security. But first, I've been saving this one up, y'all. I got some goodness that I want to share with everybody this morning on my newest thing for my office. It's actually not technically for my office, but something I've added to my Road Warrior arsenal recently. That is AR VR glasses.
Oh no, he
These
done it.
are amazing. I got it, y'all. And let me show you the box here, just so you can see what it is. What I chose is the Viture. I don't know if you can see that. That is
Yep.
the name of it right here. Essentially, what it comes with is it comes with these glasses that then plug in to the side here. You can see that there's a special port that it plugs into, and it's USB-C. So you see where I'm going with this. This USB-C allows you to plug it into any phone, any laptop, anything that supports USB-C display and turn it into a giant 130-inch view of the world of the screen right in front of you. So think about what I'm saying right now. Being on a plane and you have a 130-inch screen in front of you, you're able to, with some helper applications on your iPhone, actually view your native iPhone pictures in 3D, as well as view content, YouTube content. It will actually add a 3D depth into it. So once again, you need an extra screen when you have your laptop on travel. Here they are. You want to watch a movie when you're on an airplane and the seat's right in front of you? Here they are. The best part here is some of you may know I am optically challenged. I wear some glasses at the end of the day. And even without glasses, this has a diameter right on top here that allows you to tailor it to your vision. So even if I don't have my contacts in, I can tailor this in and get a perfectly clear screen. Is it a 10 out of 10? It gets a little heavy on the nose after a while, and certain parts of the edges can be a little bit blurry. But for the most part, for the price point, started at 600, you can probably find them at a little under 400 right now. Guys, I think this is a winner. I think this is where everything is going. Meta has a new set of glasses coming out. Ray-Bans are actually coming up with a new one that's always already with Meta as well. These are going to maybe feature some of the AR things in the future, but for right now, extra screen, some 3D content, it's a winner.
I have a question. Go ahead, Matt. Anthony. Okay. Well, so does it just, if you look around, does the screen follow you, or is it like, if I'm looking, is it like VR where the screen stays in one place?
Natively, it actually moves with the glasses. Inside of the glasses, let me show you real quick. If you can see, there's almost like a downward pointing lens, and then there's a lens on the bottom. So a couple of things are happening. Right here, you can also see there are a couple of knobs. One of the knobs actually is is it called chromatic blackout screen? So I can actually black it out or not black it out. There are that helper app that I mentioned that is actually with that you can run along with your Apple device that makes things 3D. That does allow you to move the screen within your view. But normally, if you plug it into a laptop, you plug it in, it just moves directly with you. But you can still see out the bottom.
You're using your eyes to look around, not your head.
Exactly.
Got
Exactly.
it.
They do have a
Got it.
helper thing that comes on that creates an AR motion type of thing, but as a raw use, it's just a big old screen sits right in front of your head.
Okay. Okay.
So, so I got to ask Sterling, you've mentioned iPhone and Apple twice. How does that taste?
I was waiting for this, Matt. And as a technology tester, all I will say is we have to show love to both sides of the fence. I will say that I mostly do use it with my Galaxy Z Fold 4, but I will tell you it does work a treat with my iPhone 16 as well. So got lots of love for both sides on this one.
So I do have an actual two serious questions about it because that's super intriguing because if you look at that for the Apple ecosystem, you obviously have the Vision Pro and the Vision Pro is like well out of range for most of us as far as price. I mean, what is it? Still 3-4 grand for something like that new.
Yeah.
And it's bulky, it's heavy. So where I see this as being a really potential great use case, and I think you mentioned it, is on an airplane. So if you're on a plane and you put these on, question number one, battery life. What do you typically see realistically out of a battery? Could you watch an entire movie on a plane or do you have to plug it in, to a charger while you're on the plane? Is question one. And I guess question two would be, does it have any audio or is it strictly visuals?
Great questions. We'll start with the first one. The iPhone or your anything, laptop or whatever you plug it into, does have to power these glasses, and that includes the screens and all the diameter. It has a brightness and volume, so it has to power these controls.
Yeah.
It can go down fairly quickly, not super fast, but fairly quickly. They actually offer a small dongle that goes along with it that, as you're about to guess it, plugs into the device and then has two coming out. One you can plug directly into a power source and then the phone as well. So for
Always a
long
dongle.
flights, yeah, there's always a dongle. So for long flights, I definitely plug it into the dongle, which allows the device to charge as well as the glasses while you're using it. The second part of it, for best use on planes, as you can imagine, I'm all my AirPods with the noise canceling inside of it as well. But these actually do have speakers built in right into the bridge, and they are very clear. And right there, if you're in a normal to fairly noisy environment, you can hear it perfectly fine. And one more thing I'd like to add, if you're a gamer, which I'm not, but I've read a ton of reviews on this, gaming while you're lying down, looking straight up into the ceiling, apparently is a thing to experience as well. So it kind of keeps you from having to look down. You can kind of just lay back and really just enjoy the view.
Very nice. You might have to send me some more literature on that because as someone who hates flying, it sounds like a great escape from the misery that is that.
Agreed.
Matt, what's going on in your office?
I totally agree. I would love some more details on that. Well, so speaking of office, so here's my office. I figured I'd give you guys a sneak peek to what my office actually looks like. And I wanted to point out something really cool that's behind my monitor that y'all might be able to see. And this is not necessarily a tech gadget, but I was so, intrigued by the intricacies of this. I commandeered it from my 7-year-old. So right back here is a tank, an army tank. And I wish I could show you the whole thing. It's probably about 2 feet long. And I got him this for Christmas this year. And the reason I think this is so cool, and maybe those of you in this world where you do models and, RC stuff, you'll get this, but everything down to the very last detail was put into this thing, all the way from it smokes when it drives. And I was talking to Anthony before we went live. It actually has a working turret. So the gun will literally rotate around 180 degrees and it shoots BBs. And what's wild about this is the BBs will go like 100 yards. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. I didn't realize it was so hardcore when I got it from my 7-year-old. So we have removed said BBs to avoid any eye punctures. But it was just really cool. So I commandeered it. And, the typical 7-year-old, he was interested in it for about 2 days, gave up interest in it. So now you see it sitting atop my desk. So really cool. As you can see, I've got a lot of office swag that I bring in here. I've got, model cars of all the cars that I've previously owned. So anyway, I just thought that was a really nice addition right up here in the front. So that's really, my newest, piece of cool tech, I would say. Not necessarily IT tech, but there's certainly a lot of tech that's been put into that sucker.
That's awesome. Dude, we definitely need a demo of that. Somebody needs to just
Yeah.
record something and put it back on. I gotta see
Well,
this thing
at
go.
first, I didn't even think it was working because I didn't see the BB, and turns out it was shooting it so fast nobody could see it.
Ouch.
I agree on the demo side. Maybe we even set up like, a demo of we have our OOPI appliance somewhere, and then you shoot at the appliance, but it just
Ooh.
bounces right off, right? Because
It would.
impenetrable.
I
It
like it.
would.
Oh,
So speaking
Hopefully
of
those
data
BBs aren't
protection,
powerful enough to get through steel.
I like it. I like it.
can survive ransomware and toy tank attacks.
Indeed.
That's right. I
Indeed.
smell a new ad for the YouTube coming on. Yes, that's super cool. But to the point at hand, we're here today to talk about World Backup Day, which is on March 31st. For those that don't celebrate or don't celebrate yet, put it on your calendars. It's as important as Thanksgiving and Christmas. World Backup Day, the holidays that it's not really a holiday, but it's an ideology, right? Like it's a reminder for all of those in tech that we celebrate this month to recognize the importance of those who spend their days working on backup, the backup admin, the IT admin, and also to spread the word for others who might not be so aware about it. So I'm glad all three of us are back today because we've been in this industry combined for probably over 60 years at least.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the state of backup. Let's talk about what we've seen in the last year and what we expect moving forward. And I'll kick us off. I think, it's no secret. We all work for Object First. We all see just, the importance of immutability. But one thing that's really stood out to me in some of the work we've been doing recently is some research that we're working on with ESG. 81% of IT admins agree that immutable storage is critical for backup. But, that's a majority, but it's like a B- in school grades, right? Like 81% still kind of low in my opinion.
Yeah.
I feel like immutability is at this point table stakes, and clearly many still do not. So I'm curious what y'all's thoughts on that are.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, Anthony, I've been saying that since the day I started. So like when you and I first started at Object First, and of course I came in after you, but like before we even launched our product, I could already see the writing on the wall that immutability was going to have to be a checkbox if any storage vendor expected to survive, in the rising risk of ransomware and other cyber threat climate. So I feel like immutability is a given, and I would agree with you. 81% seems low. That ought to be 100%. I mean, that is
Right.
the de facto standard to make sure that your data can't be altered. And it's funny. We were having a side conversation, a couple weeks back, Anthony, and we were talking about old CD tech, right? And I gave this analogy, previously, but I look at this back in the days of the CDR discs, right?
Mhm.
And the CDR was to me like the first real immutable like data medium, right? Because even tape could be rewritten. But if you look at the CDR, once it's burned, it's done, whether you like it or not. And there was like essentially an indefinite time limit on that. It wasn't like a 30-day immutable, 60-day immutable. It was forever immutable. So I feel like immutability has been a thing for a while. So I do feel like we need to see that percentage increase.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. It's really interesting to me. I was kind of doing a little bit of research about where World Backup Day came from and sort of where we are now. And Anthony, you talked about that 60 years of combined experience here. And what's so weird to me, first of all, World Backup Day became a thing in 2011. When somebody on Reddit basically shared their experience of losing a hard drive. And that highlighted the need for data backups. That's kind of where it sort of came from. Of course, us living in this world beforehand, we had a lot of experience with making sure people's data was safe. But it really occurred to me how it's really taking on a different meaning, a more powerful meaning today, not only when we talk about immutability, but we talk about some of the other table stakes, making sure the accounts that write the data don't have access to then going back and change the attributes of where the data lies. And that really is because we've really come together a lot with security. It really used to be a lot more about just, we lost a hard drive. A subsystem went down. Let's make sure we can recover this data. Now it's about the egress of data, people stealing data, people changing, encrypting, asking for money. So the idea of having a good backup just really has never been more important. But now today, I feel like it has ramifications that I feel like it just didn't back in 2011.
I love that you brought that up, and specifically the origin story. Question for the audience. Let us know in the chat. Do you back up your personal belongings and data? I'm just curious. And if you do, what are you using to do it, and how much? How far deep down the rabbit hole of backup in your personal life do you go? And I'll quick around the horn. Matt, do you have personal
So
backup?
it's totally interesting. It's totally interesting that you threw that out, because I look at this again, I keep going back to old tech, right? I just spent the weekend at my mom's house, and she's got a storage shed, and it's like a shrine of the 90s, right? So I was out there looking at all this old tech, and it makes me think, in the not too distant past, everybody took pictures with the old school cameras, and you actually
Yep.
had physical pictures that you would put in a shoebox somewhere, and that was kind of like your memories, other than what's in your brain, of course. Nowadays, everything's in the cloud. Well, to your point, what happens if iCloud gets knocked out? Like, I know on my phone, I would lose years worth of pictures and history, kids being born, and all this type of stuff. So for that reason, I do offload my stuff out of the cloud, and I actually save it on my NAS as a backup, because you just never know. And, generally you would think that, something like that is secure, whether it's Google Photos or iCloud or what have you, depending on your platform of choice. I think in today's world, we've proven that there is no safeguard. There is no ultimate protection. Azure has gone down. Google has gone down. Amazon has gone down. These things happen. So it's on you, the owner of this data, to make sure that it's always recoverable by any means necessary if it's important to you.
Yep. That's a really good point. And I wish you didn't say that, iCloud could go down, because I don't want to play my hand here, but that might be my end game. Sterling,
That
what
might be my
are
end
you
game.
up to?
That was awesome. That might be my end game. I had to take some personal stock here in preparing for this show, because I didn't want to come on with a bunch of lies. And there is a saying, gentlemen, and that is, the plumbers always have the leakiest pipes. I just kind of let that sit in there for a second, and then I will answer the question honestly, and I will say, it depends. It absolutely depends on the data we're talking about. I do have a personal backup on a SSD hard drive that I kind of created into an enclosure here of certain things that if the world melted tomorrow, I have to have these things. Is it encompassing of all of the things that I still hold dear? No, most of that is up in the cloud, and I would, I'd be up the creek if it all went down, which is why even with my iPhone, I leverage Microsoft OneDrive, because we all know Microsoft never goes down, even if
never.
Apple may. Oh boy, there's Matt's laugh. No, all right, there we go. But to your point, that might be my end game too. There are certain documents that I have taken some time to put aside onto a small backup, but that's a subset of probably the things that I definitely save into the cloud.
Yeah. So I'm not very good. I have this big ass gaming PC over here. I don't back up a damn thing on it. If it dies, it dies. And I go in with that mentality, right? Like, all my game saves are uploaded to Steam Cloud. All of my pictures are going to iCloud. And honestly, that's the most important thing to me, is the pictures. I actually have a Blu-ray burner in that computer. I really should use it, right? Like, just get the pictures, back them up to a disk, put the disk in a vault somewhere, keep it safe.
Yep.
I should, but to Sterling's point, the plumbers do have the leakiest pipes.
Well,
so I'm probably the worst there is when it comes to it, because I just trust implicitly that cloud is gonna protect me. And we know that's not true, right?
Maybe you're part of that 19% delta, Anthony, from that stat we're trying to get up to 100.
Yeah, I like how I started this on like full blast critiquing the backup admins, when me, myself, and I are the absolute worst.
Oh, it's so true.
So,
Well,
I mean,
so true.
we talk about cloud going down, and
Yeah.
it does happen, right? Like, all of the major vendors, if they don't have a full outage, they have partial outages where individual cloud data centers either lose network connectivity, there's natural disasters. And I mean, that's good, right? Like, the reason AWS has multiple sites on the East Coast is because we expect these things to be kind of rolling and take over and replicate and go down. I think the bigger question that I'd like to pivot to is what happens when that data becomes corrupted outside of the cloud vendor's control. And like AWS will tell you straight to your face. They say, hey, your data is your data. If someone gets access to your account and comes in and encrypts it all, or if they come in and delete it all, that's not our problem to solve for you.
Absolutely.
And you sign that end user license agreement and say, yeah, my data is my data. Amazon's going to keep it alive for me, but what happens to it is my responsibility. So what's the feeling on that? I'll start with you this time, Sterling.
I just put a little ticker up there to kind of listen to anybody also in the audience that may want to share what's something you've lost or would have lost if you don't have those backups. And I'd be lying if I didn't say, everyone, that I'm a little bit embarrassed about the admission that we just had to make, because we work for a company and we evangelize needing to have a backup, and not just having a backup in multiple places, and not just having a backup in multiple places, having a backup that allows you to get the fastest recovery when everything goes down. So it's like we have everything set in our business lives, and then in our personal lives, it's like, oof, if the worst happened, what could we or would we do? All I have to say to answer your question is I'm going to be taking some personal stake in myself. I was reading a couple of articles before this where it talked about it's the time to almost go through folders as if you're looking through old photos. Old day, does this still mean something to me? Is this important to me? Is it time to sort of think back and what it means to me and sort of reassess? Or doing a what do they call it? A Marie Kondo on your closet.
Marie Kondo.
To look at everything in your closet. Did I say that right, Anthony? Is it Marie Kondo?
Yeah, you got it.
Does this bring me joy? If it doesn't, out it goes, because I think that's where I'm at, guys.
Yeah, I think my first experience with your ticker there, Sterling, was again, I go back to the 90s. Back when the internet was first getting going, I actually ran a BBS right there in. Oh, my camera just shut off. Stand by.
I was gonna say, Matt,
we lost your video.
We don't have a backup camera, do we, Matt?
My camera just.
I was getting ready to say.
I heard it behind the screen. It just shut down. I'll get it back on in 2 seconds. But let me finish my story.
Worries.
You can look at Rode.
Yeah.
So I was running a BBS out of my house, a bulletin board system. So this was like early internet days. It was a direct connection via modem where somebody would dial in with their modem. And I didn't back it up. I was too busy trying to build it and, add the little games you could add in there. Somebody literally was able to get in, figure out how to drop to DOS, and literally formatted C:. So when I came back home, I was like, what's that blinking cursor doing up there? That's not normal. That's not what I should see. Rebooted, and it was like no system disk. So that was like, oh, okay. I had no clue that something like that could even happen. And that was really my first introduction to data security and kind of where it all got started. So let me get my camera back on. Back to you guys.
I'm trying.
You know what, Matt? Well, as you're saying that, and maybe I should bring this up. Maybe I should.
I think Sterling is frozen. So Matt lost his camera, and now Sterling is frozen. This is the ultimate World Backup Day episode.
Still here?
Because we need a backup of both of our hosts.
Here.
The camera literally just powered down. I have no idea why. So maybe I should back up my power supply.
No, it's all good. Your camera, Sterling's internet, and my little background, I think just why it's important for everyone to have backups to their hardware as well as their software.
This was all staged.
Indeed. Shucks, man. This is why you need to have a backup, folks. Here you go.
So,
I mean, one of the other things that I think we should double down on, Anthony, like you had said this earlier about the whole cloud with object storage. Like, part of the reason why object storage that's based in the cloud is so durable is that data center redundancy. Just like you said, like automatic replication of your data from East Coast to West Coast, potentially all over the world, depending on what you
Yep.
want to pay for and what tier. I think that is arguably one of the biggest things that, folks need to realize, that just because you have a backup, if it's immutable, if it's encrypted, like if everything is ironclad, if it's been tested, but it's one and it's at one location, what happens when you get that crazy wave of tornadoes that just hit the Southeast? What happens if it literally gets corrupted at the disk level because there's water in the room?
Yeah.
That's not a good situation. And you could have had all the locks, all the security protocols, everything implemented right, but you didn't diversify. You didn't get it off site. I think that is, when we talk 3-2-1, that's arguably one of the most important parts of that strategy, is getting one off site.
I completely agree. Rick Vanover was on our last episode all about true immutability. And he was just cutting us up because he kept taking the zip code and changing it. 32110, with one of them being immutable with 0 errors, mutable or air gapped. I prefer immutability, preferably over air gap. And then he went to the Daytona zip code, which, what was that? That was like 33310, like 3 copies. He just having a good old time. But his point stood, right? Is like, as we move into the future, more and more copies become so necessary, simply because we cannot trust. And we have a whole paper on zero trust data resilience, but like, we cannot trust even the backups for the backups are going to be there in certain kinds of outages. One of the reasons I think ransomware has become such a tour de force, like every year we say ransomware is getting worse, and it's not just a marketing tactic, it's true. Every year ransomware gets worse because it becomes more pervasive. It becomes that much better at saying, hey, I'm not just going to hit your data center, I'm going to hit your entire business. I'm everywhere. I'm not just going to take down the casino. I'm going to take down, all of the banks that are connected to the casino. I'm going to stop everything from happening. And I tell you what, to the both of you, the thing that really blows my mind the most in the last 10 years of being in backup is we had the East Coast Colonial Pipeline go down, and they were not able to recover from their backups, and took them forever to do it. And that was not like the big wake up moment for everybody, right? Like, you would think that every single vendor, small business to the largest of the large, would be thinking, we really need to test our backup strategy and make sure that if we go down, we don't stop shipping gas to the entire East Coast. But no,
it's true.
We still see people who get hit every day and they don't have backup, so they haven't tested their backup strategy. And it's kind of terrifying. Like, what is it actually going to take to get that light bulb to go off for everyone to say, I need to be doing 3-2-1-1-0. I need to be following zero trust frameworks. I need to have my backup strategy in order to get them to go. But we have not seen that event yet, which is a little bit terrifying to me.
You know what's interesting to me on that point is you have to ask, what is it going to take? Well, half of us on the East Coast not being able to get gas for a number of days should have been that event. When I go back and think about the things that are stopping these major companies from making the change, I feel like it is that mitigating event. And it is also the fact that they have all of their red tape. They have all of the things they have to get through to change direction to stop of how they've been doing things in the past. Some of these very large corporations, it would take a lot of upfront costs. And for some of the very small people that want to protect their data, it's a big upfront cost for them as well. And I think, matter of fact, Object First, we're actually just starting to offer a subscription, a consumption service, these types of things that are going to really help people adopt more of these things without some of those upfront costs. I feel like it's the wake up moment, but there are also all of these other red tape barriers that have kind of been there that are keeping them from getting the protection they need to really turn that corner.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Matt.
I think I was going to say, I agree with you, Sterling. I think part of the problem is what did we used to call it back in the day? Do nothing you. It's just there's a general thought, at least at some level, of, well, it won't happen to me, or we'll get around to it in fiscal year 26, or we'll put it on the budget and we'll, get it implemented in the next 3-year plan or cycle or whatever. And the problem is we talk about it's not an if, it's a when statement. That's not just a cliche. It's based on data that we keep seeing up and to the right, right? And
Yep.
then you've got more and more of these attacks targeting backups first. It's not like they only target backups. They just go after backups first so that they get those locked down and encrypted and held ransom. Then they infiltrate the rest of the environment, right? So that way, once a problem is even known, it's too late at that point because the backups are already attacked. So I think this is the data that we've seen, and it's never been more important to look at, immutability and ransomware protection, having it on-prem. We've talked about these clouds going down, and sometimes it could take a while and be very expensive to get your data back. So, Anthony, you talked about having a backup plan, and I would equally say having a restore plan, like having a plan on what to do when things go sideways. Like, what is that going to look like? Well, if you've got a petabyte of data and you're trying to download over a 500 megabit connection, I mean, come on, do the math. Your business will be out of business before you finish that restoration. So it's like, what's your plan to get things back on the tracks when things derail? And I think that's incredibly important to not only have a plan, but also practice the plan, test the plan to make sure you're ready for that event, whatever it may be.
And you know what happens when you test the plan is you actually get to see where everything breaks. You also get to see, I love what you said, Matt, about like, if you have 500 meg for a petabyte, that's your chance to go to your upper management and say, we need budget. We need to change something, because you now have essentially a realistic scenario versus a total cost of ownership. And I think a lot of people get stuck on that, right? When you're negotiating for, hey, we need to upgrade our storage, we need to update our backup servers. We don't have budget for that. Well, if you can show them in real time, we went and did a test, and it's going to take us 14 weeks to get back up and running at our current data transfer rate. Now you're going to get budget, because the alternative is your director goes to their CEO or board, whoever, and says, yeah, if we go down, it's 14 weeks of company business loss. Like no one is going to say no to giving you more budget for that. So there's a very good reason both ways to test. Is one, to make sure you can actually do it, and two, find those deficiencies and fill them now, because time is not on your side in this regard.
Yeah,
that's right.
Well said.
Well, as we think towards the future, I think, the one thing I get asked about a lot, and I think it's worth discussing, is what the impact of AI is going to have on all of this. And for me, anytime someone says, well, what's Object First doing around AI, or what are you thinking about when it comes to the future of backup and AI? It's not so much like, what are we as a company going to do, but it's more, what does the industry, the data protection industry, need to think about? And it's to your point, Matt, AI is freaking huge. If you want to have a good one, you have to have a lot of data. And it's not just, hey, I've got a Blu-ray disc full of good data to feed my AI. It's like, no, I've got a data center full of usable data that I'm using to train my AI. It's becoming a problem of scale. It's becoming a problem of, if that data is corrupted even in the slightest way, what you feed and train the AI on can be easily corrupted and manipulated. So it's, how do I preserve large data sets? How do I back up large data sets? Is this even something that is possible to physically do today? And how do I recover? There's so many nuances to this new sort of generation we're moving into that I don't think anyone really has the answers yet. But I'm curious what y'all have bumped into.
For me, you just nailed it, which was the integrity of our data is going to become more and more important. Absolutely. AI is going to explode the data sets. Just like virtualization did before that, by the way. I mean, so it's kind of that next iteration of that piece, but being able to trust the data, people have to train these LLMs. If what they're using to train becomes somehow tainted, think about what that can do to the overall ripple effect of everything that we use it for in life. And so having some of those basics covered, the immutability, making sure nobody's getting to that data, making sure you can recover that data quickly. I just think it really is going to be about the integrity and the confidence level of which you can trust some of these AI models.
That's a good point on trust. Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
garbage in, garbage out, right? So that's like you
Mhm.
definitely need to make sure the data is clear. Another area where I feel like AI is going to be big in this space is detections. And you're already seeing some of this being integrated with Veeam, where they're looking at, hey, did this backup size explode almost overnight? Is that normal? It's like looking at these different trends and allowing you to at least look at that. It's almost just like, how fraud works on your credit card. You make a credit card purchase overseas, they didn't know you were going over there. It might decline it, send you a text. Was this really you? Yes. Right. Similar concept of, hey, we noticed these irregularities. Is this normal? Did you download a bunch of new data and the backup set grew because it's perfectly legit? Or maybe you want to go take a peek at that.
Yeah.
And to me, that's where I see this evolving, rapidly, exponentially in the next year or two, is the ability to try to track and detect any type of these threats that are coming in before it's too late. I feel like that's where a huge emphasis is being placed right now. But let's not forget, we've talked about updates before on the show and 0-day attacks. That can only be so good, right? It can only do so much. It certainly can't predict the future, and it's not going to detect a live attack, most likely, with any type of notice where you can intervene and save everything. So it's still extremely critical to have those backups, make sure they're immutable, make sure they can't be impacted, and also make sure they're geodiverse so that you don't forget about this little thing called Mother Nature and other natural disasters that can also cause you to lose data, not just the bad actors.
That's a good point.
The threats today are not going to be the threats tomorrow. And I think
Yeah.
that's like the important thing to remember is we
Yeah.
only know what we know, but you can only prepare for what you know. And what we don't know, that's what's really terrifying. And that's why applying everything you just said, Matt, is
Yeah.
so critical. Being able to think beyond like 3, 2, 1, 0 trust, immutability, and into the unknowns. Like, what is the worst possible thing that could happen? And do we actually have the ability to recover from that? That's the question everyone needs to be asking themselves if you're in IT today, because the time is only going to tell what the next terrible thing is.
Yeah.
Agreed.
They're only
Agreed.
getting smarter, and that's why you see us implementing things like ADI security, where
Yes.
we've talked about the deep fakes before, where they're literally
Mhm.
using AI to appear as somebody and use their
Yep.
voice. Well, now it's going to be even more difficult because you
Yep.
essentially have to have 4 people agreeing, yes, let's do that action. So I think
Yeah.
continuing implementing security features like that to combat it has never been more important.
My only problem with ADIs is, if you're a spider person, then you can kind of hack the whole system. Like,
Absolutely.
it's really unfair,
Death to
for
spiders.
those
I hate
individuals, they're able to hack it all because spider people are people, and I think we shouldn't forget that.
That's going to be a threat. I'm telling you right now.
nothing good has ever come from a spider. I'm just saying. Let's keep moving.
Well, I
Nightmares.
think we've done a good job of covering it. And as World Backup Day, it's what, March 31st. So we've got another week and a day, week and a half to get us there. Any final thoughts that people should be aware about for this World Backup season that we're in? We'll start with you, Sterling.
My final thought is to everyone listening, you're probably not as protected as you think. Today, or World Backup Day, the 31st, is a time to really consider that and to go back and check it out. A couple of the numbers that I got here: 60% of backups are incomplete. And this is not only just for companies, but also us personally. 50% of our restores that we try fail. 20% or 50% of all the people will never know their systems have been attacked. So now is the time to get ahead of it, take stock, and save your most valuable digital possessions. Matt?
Yeah, totally agree. I was going to say audit your data, because just like we've talked about here, we definitely live and breathe it in the business world, but we talk about our personal stuff, things that we would be devastated if we lost, and we're not 100%, 5 or 6 nines in the green protected, right? So it's like we need to look at that. I definitely think there is significance on having on-prem immutable ransomware proof storage. And I feel like a lot of people, have either gone to the cloud and now they're pulling some data back. Maybe they did a little over rotation to the cloud, and now they're seeing, okay, bandwidth, geographic limitations based on throughput options. There's plenty of reasons why you need backups on-prem that are, immutable and not susceptible to any type of these threats for quick recovery. And I feel like people miss, at least a lot of people miss that variable with regards to brand integrity. And it's like, if you're down, if you're inaccessible for hours sometimes, that can last months, if not years, as far as a ding on your reputation, could even bankrupt some companies, right? So it's absolutely critical to have a plan, like Anthony said earlier, have a backup plan, have a restore plan, and test those plans. We always talk about Sure Backup 32110, making sure there's no errors in your actual backups before you worry about shipping them all over the place. But let's not forget, that's just one part of it. That's just saying, hey, this is recoverable. But when you actually do a site restore, or let's say a full data center recovery, you might have things like DNS problems. You may have databases not in sync. There's other things that you need to test to ensure that you do have a plan. You've verified the plan. You've documented the plan. So if you get hit by a bus, somebody else can step in. These are all things that we need to reflect on as business professionals to make sure that we're ready for those events, because they are going to happen. We joked about it's not if, but when, and these are based on real world data. We see it going up and to the right. So take some time this month, audit your data, see what you've got, see what's protected, what's not protected. Make sure you have on-prem immutable storage that's secure, and make sure that you're ready for when something like this happens. You've got a plan to recover.
I've got goosebumps. I think we need to soundbite what Matt just said and put it on repeat for other people to hear. That, because I can't say anything else other than I completely wholeheartedly agree. The one thing I'll say is, if you're not checking out our blog, I threw up a little QR code. It's hanging out next to Matt's head over there. Give that a scan. We've got a World Backup Day blog coming out. It'll be out on World Backup Day, but we're also putting a lot of information out there about sort of new features and new ways that you can use Object First and Veeam to increase your backup security and to ensure that you're able to recover at all times. Definitely worth peeping the blog if you get a minute. A lot of good content going there. And I'll also just say, if you haven't taken a look at our NCC report, which ties exactly into what Matt's testing, it's a little bit of us eating our own cooking, right? We paid the NCC penetration testing firm to go and find every flaw they could security-wise with our box, and they did. And we responded to that by fixing 20 flaws, having them retest, and them saying, you guys are unhackable. So just, from a vendor perspective, if you are not doing third-party security tests and publishing it and making your end users aware, this is something that everyone needs to be doing. It's something that we take pride in doing, and it's how we ensure that our customers' backup data stays safe when it is on an Object First UPI appliance. So that's my big it's not really a takeaway so much as it is a call to action for you, the viewer. Make sure that your vendors are doing that, because if they're just claiming security through obscurity, that's not real security, and it will fail. But I think that does it. Yeah. I think that does it for our Zero Gravity Live this month. We thank you for joining us for this special World Backup Day presentation, and we'll be sure to let you know what our next topic's going to be, with, I'm sure, some exciting guests as usual. But until then, stay weightless, stay frictionless, stay zero gravity. We'll see you next time.